Have you ever felt the silence of a mist-laden loch press in around you, or heard a sound on the wind that seemed to carry an ancient, mournful song? Have you sensed a presence in the deep woods just beyond the edge of sight, or felt an inexplicable chill in the air of a historic castle? These sensations are the very breath of legend, stories that rise from the peat and stone, carried on the highland gales and whispered by the Atlantic tides. Welcome, then, to a tapestry woven from such threads where the veil between worlds is thin and the echoes of the extraordinary linger. Prepare to journey with us through the wild heart of Scotland and the mystical shores of Ireland, as we have uncovered tales of monstrous denizens of the deep, kind-hearted spirits of the wilderness, spectral harbingers of fate, and the potent, often perilous world of the Ouse Sea. These are the legends that have shaped the dreams and fears of generations, and their stories are far from over. The Loch Ness Monster. Our story is anchored in the very soul of the Scottish Highlands, where Loch Ness, a sliver of obsidian water, carves its way through a landscape of breathtaking, rugged grandeur. Imagine a loch stretching for over 23 miles, a vast enigmatic trench plunged into depths so profound, so chillingly black that the sunlight dares not penetrate its secrets. Its waters, stained the color of peat from the ancient lands that bleed into it, are often disturbed by sudden violent squalls that whip its surface into a frenzy, mirroring the untamed spirit of the wilderness that surrounds it. Heather-clad hills, their slopes often shrouded in a spectral, clinging mist, tumble down to its shores, their silence broken only by the cry of a distant bird or the sigh of the wind through the gnarled pines. It is a place of ancient stones and whispered histories, a realm where the veil between worlds feels impossibly thin. Long before the hum of modern engines disturbed its tranquility, this loch was a place of reverence and fear. The Picts, those enigmatic painted people of ancient Scotland, carved strange aquatic beasts into standing stones that still watch over the glens, their meaning lost to time, yet their presence a haunting suggestion of creatures that shared these waters. But the first recorded whisper of our tale, the one that truly etched itself into the annals of legend, comes from the 6th century. Picture the scene. The Irish monk, Saint Columba, a figure of profound piety and unwavering faith, journeying through the land of the Picts. He arrives at the shores of the River Ness, which flows from the northern end of the loch. There, a somber gathering meets his eyes. A local man, they recount with trembling voices, had been swimming in the river only to be savagely mauled and dragged beneath the surface by a fearsome water beast. The creature, they said, had returned, its dark form lurking menacingly in the depths. Columba, undeterred by their terror, commanded one of his followers, a man named Lugna Mokumen, to swim across the river. As Lugna cleaved through the cold, dark water, the beast, described as a monstrous, roaring creature, suddenly surfaced. It lunged, its great maw agape, its eyes burning with primal hunger, moving with terrifying speed towards the swimmer. The air crackled with a primal dread, but Columba, standing resolute upon the bank, raised his hand invoking the name of God and commanded the beast, "Go no further! Do not touch the man! Go back at once!" And here, the legend takes a breathtaking turn. At the sound of the saint's voice, it is said the creature halted as if struck by an unseen force. It recoiled, a sound like a pained bellow escaping it, and then, with a speed that belied its bulk, it retreated back into the shadowy depths of the loch, vanishing as suddenly as it had appeared. The Picts, witnessing this divine intervention, were overcome with awe, and the power of the saint and the mystery of the beast were forever intertwined. Centuries flowed by like the dark waters of the Ness itself. Local folk whispered tales of the Ich Uisge, the terrifying waterhorse of Gaelic folklore, a shapeshifter that could appear as a magnificent steed, luring unwary travelers to a watery grave. These were the stories that clung to the mist-laden shores, tales told by peat fires on long, dark nights. But it was not until the 20th century that our creature now affectionately or fearfully known as Nessie, truly burst forth onto the world stage, capturing the imagination of millions. The year was 1933. A new road had recently been completed along the western shore of Loch Ness, offering clearer, more frequent views of its expansive surface than ever before. One spring afternoon, a local couple, Mr. George Spicer and his wife, were driving along this new route. What they saw that day would catapult the legend from local folklore to international sensation. Imagine their astonishment, their sheer heart-stopping disbelief as an extraordinary creature, unlike anything they had ever conceived, lumbered across the road before them. Mrs. Spicer would later describe it with a shudder, an extraordinary form of animal, a dragon or prehistoric monster. It was, they claimed, a creature of immense bulk, with a long undulating neck and a body that seemed to writhe and heave as it moved. It had no discernible limbs, but propelled itself with a strange, powerful motion, disappearing into the thick undergrowth on the other side, leaving behind only the flattened bracken and the indelible imprint of its passage on their minds. Their account, published in the Inverness Courier, ignited a firestorm of interest. The modern age of Nessie had begun. Suddenly, sightings proliferated. People flocked to the loch, their eyes scanning the dark, brooding waters, hoping for a glimpse of the marvel. Hoteliers reported mysterious, large V-shaped wakes disturbing the otherwise placid surface. Fishermen spoke of immense, shadowy forms moving beneath their boats, too large to be any known inhabitant of the loch. Then came the photographs, tantalizing, controversial, and utterly captivating. The most famous, the surgeon's photograph, published in 1934, depicted a slender, swan-like neck and head rising gracefully from the water. For decades, this image became the iconic representation of Nessie, proof for many that a creature of ancient lineage still swam in the Scottish depths. Though later revealed to be an elaborate, albeit ingenious hoax, its power in cementing the legend in the public consciousness is undeniable. It fed the hunger for the unknown, the desire to believe that in our modern, mapped world there were still corners where mystery held sway. Other evidence followed. In 1960, Tim Dinsdale, an aeronautical engineer, captured grainy cine film footage showing a large, humpbacked object moving across the loch, leaving a powerful wake. Experts at the Royal Air Force's Photographic Interpretation Unit would later analyze the footage, concluding, with a degree of cautious intrigue, that the object was probably an animate object. Expeditions, armed with ever more sophisticated technology, descended upon the loch. Sonar sweeps painted tantalizing, ambiguous pictures of large, moving targets in the abyssal depths. Submarines, both manned and robotic, delved into the cold, peat-stained darkness, their lights cutting feeble swaths through the impenetrable gloom, searching for definitive proof. The descriptions of the creature, pieced together from countless fleeting glimpses and hopeful interpretations, painted a picture of something truly extraordinary. Often, it was the long serpentine neck, held aloft or snaking through the water, that observers reported first. Sometimes, 1, 2, or even 3 humps were seen, breaking the surface in a line, suggesting a creature of considerable length. Its skin was generally described as dark, grey, black, or a mottled brownish green, glistening as if wet, smooth, or perhaps like the hide of a seal. Its movements were often described as graceful, yet powerful, capable of surprising bursts of speed. Was it a relic of the age of dinosaurs, a plesiosaur somehow trapped in the geological fault that formed the loch? Or something stranger still, something unique to this isolated, fathomless body of water? The loch itself guards its secrets jealously. Its waters are so murky with peat that visibility drops to mere inches beyond the surface. Its sides plunge steeply into darkness, riddled with hidden caves and underwater ledges where anything, truly anything, could lie concealed. The sheer volume of water is staggering, a cold, dark kingdom largely inaccessible to human eyes. Year after year, the vigil continues. Tourists flock to the shores, their cameras and binoculars ever ready. Scientists still occasionally probe its depths, driven by that enduring human quest to understand the unknown. Local boatmen, their faces weathered by the highland winds, share stories with a knowing glint in their eyes. Tales passed down through generations, forever blurring the line between what is seen and what is believed. And Nessie remains an enigma, a whisper on the wind, a ripple on the water. There are still moments, even now, a sudden, unexplained disturbance on a calm day, an odd shape on a sonar screen that vanishes before it can be truly identified. A fleeting shadow glimpsed from a lonely stretch of shore as the highland twilight descends, painting the sky in hues of violet and blood orange, and the surface of the loch becomes a mirror reflecting the deepening gloom. Just last autumn, as the first chill of winter began to bite and the mists clung stubbornly to the water's surface well into the day, a young couple, seeking solace from the clamor of modern life, were kayaking near the ruins of Urquhart Castle. The loch was unnervingly still, like black glass. Suddenly, not 30 yards from their fragile craft, the water bulged, a great dark dome of it, smooth and silent, rising several feet into the air. No splash, no sound, just this immense living pressure from below. For a heartbeat it held its form, vast and utterly inexplicable, before slowly, almost deliberately, it submerged, leaving behind only an eddy of swirling peat-dark water, and two hearts hammering in unison against their ribs. They saw no neck, no tail, only that impossible silent displacement of water, a powerful presence briefly making itself known before melting back into the abyss. What was it? A trick of the light? A rogue wave in the stillness? Or something else? The depths of Loch Ness hold their breath, and the mystery, like the creature itself, dives deep, waiting perhaps for the perfect moment to once again break the surface, to remind us that not all wonders of this world have yet been catalogued, not all legends have been laid to rest. Kelpies and each uiske. Our setting is a land sculpted by water, where silver rivers carve through ancient glens, where lochs, both fresh and briny, lie like scattered jewels, some serene, others fathomless and brooding. The coastline, a jagged fringe against the relentless surge of the North Atlantic, is fraught with hidden coves and treacherous currents. In such a realm, water is life, yes, but it is also a gateway, a threshold to a world unseen, a domain where primal forces hold sway, and where an unwary step can lead you into the very heart of legend. First, let us draw near, cautiously, to the realm of the kelpie. Imagine a creature of breathtaking allure, often appearing on the banks of a rushing river or beside a tranquil, reed-fringed pool. It takes the form of a horse, but no ordinary steed is this. Its coat might gleam like wet silk, often a dapple grey or a startling luminous white. Its mane and tail long and flowing, perpetually dripping as if it has just risen from the depths. Its eyes, though, might hold a glint of something wild, something ancient and knowing, a depth that betrays its otherworldly nature. The kelpie is a master of enticement. It might stand patiently, its head bowed as if inviting a gentle hand, or perhaps nuzzle a weary traveler, offering its strong back for a journey's respite. Children, especially, are drawn to its seemingly docile charm. Picture a group of youngsters, their laughter echoing in the crisp air, stumbling upon such a magnificent creature, grazing peacefully by the water's edge. One by one, emboldened by its calm, they climb upon its broad, inviting back. The first child settles, then the second, and the kelpie's back seems to lengthen, accommodating each new rider with impossible ease. But then the air grows colder. A subtle shift occurs. The once soft hide of the kelpie becomes inexplicably adhesive, like wet pitch, and the children's small hands, once stroking its silken coat, are now trapped fast. A dawning terror replaces their innocent joy as the kelpie, its gentle guise falling away, lets out a sound that is no earthly whinny, but a chilling, guttural shriek that speaks of the cold, dark places beneath the water. With a powerful surge, it plunges into the deepest part of the river or loch, its rider's screams abruptly silenced by the unforgiving embrace of the current. Their fate is a swift, watery doom, dragged down to the kelpie's lair, never to be seen again, save perhaps for a small, sodden ribbon or a single lost shoe washed ashore, a heartbreaking testament to the creature's deadly deceit. The kelpie, it is whispered, delights in the echo of its victim's drowning gasps. There are tales, of course, of those who sought to outwit these beings. Sometimes a kelpie could be captured if one could slip a bridle over its head, particularly a bridle marked with a cross. Subdued thus, its immense strength could be harnessed, forced to labor, often in the building of mills or castles. But such servitude was ever temporary, and the kelpie would always yearn for its watery freedom, often cursing the families of its captors for generations to come. Its cry, a mournful, echoing call, could sometimes be heard on the eve of a storm, or when a drowning was imminent, a harbinger of sorrow. Now let us turn our gaze with even greater trepidation to a creature of yet more profound malice, a being whose very name is a shudder on the tongue, the ich-wiske, pronounced ek-oshkia, the water horse. While the kelpie haunts the freshwater streams and inland lochs, the ich-wiske is a terror of the sea lochs, the wild firths and the storm-tossed open ocean, though it has been known to venture into freshwater bodies as well. The ich-wiske is a shapeshifter of formidable power and cunning. It too can appear as a magnificent horse, often black as a starless night, with eyes like burning embers. Its allure is potent, promising swift passage across treacherous waters or simply an irresistible vision of wild beauty. But it can also take other forms to ensnare its prey. It might manifest as a strikingly handsome man, his clothes perhaps a little damp, his charm disarming, luring an unsuspecting maiden to the water's edge with sweet words and promises, only for her to feel an icy grip and the horrifying realization of his true nature as he drags her into the waves. Sometimes, it is said, it can even appear as a giant bird, its shadow falling vast and chilling upon the land. The true horror of the ich-wiske, however, lies not just in the drowning, but in what comes after. Should a hapless soul be tricked into mounting the ich-wiske in its equine form, they too would find themselves irrevocably stuck to its adhesive hide. But the ich-wiske does not merely drown its victims. Once it has borne its prey into the depths, it transforms into its most monstrous self, a creature of tearing claws and insatiable hunger. It rips its victims apart, devouring them entirely, all save for one grisly remnant, the liver. This, for reasons lost to the darkest corners of folklore, it will not touch. And so, a day or two after someone has vanished near waters haunted by an ich-wiske, a single pale liver might be found washed upon the shore, a macabre and terrifying calling card, a final, silent scream from the deep. The sheer ferocity, the utter consumption, marks the ich-wiske as a thing of pure elemental nightmare. To encounter an ich-wiske was to brush against almost certain gruesome death. The old tales are filled with warnings. Never to ride a lone horse found near the water, especially if it has seaweed tangled in its mane or if its hooves seem to be on backwards, a subtle sign of its otherworldly origin. The scent of the sea, or a faint chilling odor like the grave, might cling to its handsome human form. To speak its name aloud was to risk drawing its attention. Even the bravest hearts quail at the thought of the ich-wiske. There's a tale of a blacksmith, a man of renowned strength and courage, who managed to capture one. He brought it to his forge, intending to shoe it, perhaps to bind it to his will. He heated his irons in the roaring fire, but as he approached the tethered beast, its eyes blazing with an infernal light, it spoke. Its voice the sound of crashing waves and grinding stones, promising him and his descendants unending torment. The blacksmith, for all his might, was chilled to the bone. Some say he released it, others say it broke free, leaving his forge a ruin, but all agree that the shadow of that encounter never left him. These are not mere stories to frighten children, or so the old folk would have you believe. They are echoes of a time when humanity lived more closely with the wild, untamed world, a world where every shadowed pool and every mist-wreathed loch could conceal wonders, yes, but also terrors unimaginable. The lapping of water against the shore, the sudden swirl in a still pool, the distant cry of a seabird on a lonely coast, all could be signs. And even now, in our world of bright lights and bustling cities, who is to say these ancient beings have entirely faded into myth? Imagine a lonely stretch of highland road, late at night, the rain lashing down, the dark expanse of a loch just visible through the gloom. A driver, tired and eager for warmth, sees a figure by the roadside, thumbing for a lift. A handsome figure, perhaps, though something about the eyes. Or picture a group of friends wild camping by a remote sea inlet, waking in the pre-dawn chill to the sound of what they think are hoofbeats on the shingle, though they know no horses are kept for miles. A dark shape, half seen in the lingering sea mist, seems to move near the water's edge and then vanishes. Was it just the play of light? A deer startled from its rest? Or does the Iech still hunt, its hunger eternal, its forms ever shifting, waiting patiently for the careless, the unwary, to stray just a little too close to the water's embrace? Banshees. She is not a creature of wanton malice, no fiend seeking to inflict harm. Nay, the banshee is a far more complex, more sorrowful figure. She is an ancestral spirit, a guardian, though her guardianship brings not comfort, but the chilling premonition of death. Her lament is not for every soul, but is tied, through bonds of blood and time immemorial, to the ancient Gaelic families of Ireland, the O'Connors, the O'Neills, the O'Briens, the Kavanaghs, the McCarthys, and others of noble storied lineage. To hear her cry is to know that death is poised to visit your house, to claim one of your kin. The appearance of the banshee is as varied and unsettling as the forms grief itself can take. She may manifest as an old woman, her face a mask of sorrow, etched with the lines of countless ages and endless weeping. Her hair, white as a winter frost or silver as moonlight on still water, streams unbound around her, often to her knees, sometimes even sweeping the ground. Her eyes, red and swollen from her ceaseless tears, hold a grief so profound it can chill the observer to the core. She might be seen hunched beneath a skeletal tree, or gliding silently along a lonely boreen, her form spectral and translucent, the moonlight passing through her as if she were made of mist and memory. Yet at other times she appears as a young woman of haunting, ethereal beauty. Her hair might be a cascade of gold or fiery red, her form tall and slender, draped in a flowing gown of white or grey, like a shroud woven from moonbeams. Her face, though lovely, is invariably pale, touched by an otherworldly sorrow, and her eyes reflect a deep, inconsolable pain. And sometimes, in a particularly chilling manifestation, she is the Bean Naig, the washerwoman at the ford. Here, she is seen by a stream or river, often at dusk or by the faint light of the moon, furiously washing blood-stained clothes, the grave clothes of the one whose death she foretells. The air around her will be heavy with the scent of damp earth and an indescribable ancient grief. To stumble upon her in this guise is a particularly potent omen, often signifying a violent or untimely demise. But it is not her appearance, however unnerving, that is the true signature of the banshee. It is her cry. Oh, that keening wail, the cawyniad, a sound that transcends mere human sorrow. It is a lament that begins perhaps as a low, mournful sobbing, soft as the rustle of autumn leaves, then swells and rises, climbing the scales of grief until it becomes a sound of piercing, unearthly anguish. It can be a high, thin shriek that slices through the stillness of the night like a shard of ice, or a deep, resonant ululation that seems to vibrate in your very bones, echoing the sorrow of ages. This cry, it is said, can drift for miles across the countryside, yet often only the person whose family is about to suffer the loss, or those of their bloodline, will hear it distinctly. Others might dismiss it as the cry of a night bird, the sighing of the wind through the eaves, or the mournful howl of a distant dog. But for those attuned to its spectral frequency, there is no mistaking its chilling portent. It is a sound that strips away all illusion, leaving only the stark, cold certainty of impending loss. To hear it is to feel your heart clench, your breath catch in your throat, as a profound sense of dread settles upon your soul. Imagine an old family homestead, nestled in a quiet glen, generations having lived and died within its weathered stone walls. An elderly matriarch lies abed, her breath shallow, her family gathered around, keeping a somber vigil. Outside, the wind whispers through the ancient oaks, and the moon casts long dancing shadows. Suddenly, from the darkness near the river, or perhaps from the misty fields that stretch towards the fairy rath on the hill, a sound begins. It is faint at first, a mere tremor on the air, but it grows, a sorrowful, ululating cry that seems to weave itself into the fabric of the night. The family members exchange glances, their faces pale, their eyes wide with a shared, unspoken understanding. The Bean-Seeder has come, and they know, with a certainty that needs no words, that before the dawn breaks, one of their own will have passed from this world. There are stories, whispered down through the generations, of individuals who have chanced upon the Banshee. One such tale tells of a young man returning late from a neighboring village, taking a shortcut across the fields. As he neared an old hawthorn tree, sacred in Irish folklore, he saw a figure. At first he thought it was a woman from his village, lost or in distress. She was combing her long, silver hair with a silver comb, her head bowed. As he approached, offering assistance, she looked up. Her face was beautiful, but her eyes were wells of unspeakable sorrow, and from her lips issued a low, soft moan that sent shivers down his spine. He knew in that instant what she was. He turned and fled, the sound of her gentle, mournful weeping following him all the way home. The next morning, word came that his beloved grandmother had passed peacefully in her sleep during the night. It is said that to see the Banshee is a more grave omen than merely to hear her cry. Some believe it can even foretell the death of the person who witnesses her directly. And while her lament is primarily for the ancient Irish families, tales persist of her cry being heard before great national tragedies, her sorrow extending beyond individual families to mourn for the island itself. The tradition of the Banshee is woven deeply into the Irish psyche, a poignant acknowledgement of the inevitability of death and the enduring power of ancestral connection. She is a reminder that even in our modern, rational world, there are mysteries that linger, echoes from an older time that refuse to be silenced, and so the legend endures. Even now, in the quiet corners of rural Ireland, when the wind howls in a particular way around the gables of an old house, or a strange, sorrowful cry is heard in the dead of night, a shiver might run down the spine. Is it merely the wind? Or could it be her, the eternal mourner, her vigil unbroken? Perhaps on a still moonless night, if you listen very carefully, out beyond the sounds of the sleeping world, you might just hear a faint distant sobbing on the breeze, a sound that seems to be drawing closer, searching, waiting. For whom does the Bean-Seeder wail tonight? The Gilly Dhu. Picture, if you will, a particular kind of woodland. nestled near Gairloch and Loch Adruing in the northwestern Highlands. These are not the dark, foreboding pine forests of some tales, but rather sun-dappled havens of slender, silver-barked birch trees. Their leaves in spring and summer create a delicate, trembling canopy, casting a mosaic of light and shadow upon the mossy floor below. The air here is sweet with the scent of damp earth, of fern, and the subtle, woody fragrance of the birch itself. It is a place of quiet solitude where the only sounds are the whisper of the wind through the leaves, the gentle murmur of a hidden burn, and the occasional call of a forest bird. Yet, it is also a place where one might easily lose their way, where the familiar world feels distant, and the ancient pulse of nature beats strong and true. It is in such sanctuaries that the Gilly-doo, the dark-haired lad in the Gaelic tongue, makes his home. He is a fairy, yes, but not of the glittering, whimsical courts of some legends. He is a being of the wildwood, as much a part of the forest as the trees themselves. Imagine a slight, wiry figure, his skin the hue of bark in shadow, his hair as dark and tangled as the forest undergrowth, or perhaps the deep green of pine needles. But his most remarkable feature is his attire, for he is clothed entirely in leaves and moss, woven together with such skill that he seems to melt into the background of his beloved birch trees, a living embodiment of sylvan camouflage. To glimpse him is to see a flicker at the corner of your eye, a momentary shape that resolves into bark and leaf almost before it is truly perceived. The Gilly-doo is, by his very nature, a solitary and intensely shy creature. He shuns the company of mortals, especially adults, and the clang and clamor of human settlements are anathema to him. He is the spirit of the untamed, the quiet heart of the wilderness, and his primary concern is the well-being of his forest domain. He is a guardian of the birch trees, watching over them with a silent, unwavering devotion. While generally gentle and disinclined towards malice, he possesses a wild protective streak. Those who venture into his woods with ill intent, bearing axes to needlessly fell his trees or traps to ensnare its creatures, might find themselves mysteriously led astray. Paths that seemed clear might twist and turn, familiar landmarks might vanish, and an unsettling feeling of being watched, of unseen eyes following their every move, might prickle at the back of their necks until, frustrated and unnerved, they abandon their destructive course and flee the woods. He rarely resorts to outright harm, preferring misdirection and the subtle manipulation of the forest's natural illusions. But there is a softer side to this reclusive spirit, a tenderness reserved, it is said, especially for children, and it is here we find the most enduring and beloved tale of the Gilly-doo. The story often centers on a young girl, sometimes named Jessie McCrae, or perhaps another child of the glens who, with the innocent curiosity of youth, wandered away from her home. Picture young Jessie, her bright eyes wide with the wonders of the woods. She chases a flitting butterfly with wings like stained glass. Deeper and deeper she goes, the familiar sounds of her village fading behind her, replaced by the hushed symphony of the ancient birches. The sun begins to dip below the rugged peaks, painting the sky in hues of amber and rose, but in the depths of the forest, the shadows lengthen and coalesce, and a chill begins to creep into the air. Realization dawns upon Jessie, cold and sharp. She is lost. Fear, a small tight knot in her chest, begins to grow. Her calls for her mother are swallowed by the immensity of the trees, her tears tracing paths down her dirt-smudged cheeks. It is then, as despair begins to take root, that a rustling in the leaves nearby makes her heart leap. Not the rustling of a startled deer, nor the scuttling of some small woodland creature, but something different, something deliberate. And from behind the silver trunk of an ancient birch, a figure emerges. It is the Gilly-doo. Covered from head to foot in soft green moss and trailing leaves, his dark eyes surprisingly gentle, he regards the lost child not with menace, but with a quiet compassion. Jessie, despite his wild appearance, feels her fear begin to subside, replaced by a strange sense of calm. There is a kindness in his gaze, a gentleness in his silent presence. He does not speak in words she understands, yet somehow he communicates comfort and reassurance. Through the deepening twilight and the long dark hours of the Highland night, the Gilly-Doo stays with her. He leads her to a sheltered hollow at the base of a great birch, its roots forming a natural cradle. He covers her with more moss and dry leaves, a surprisingly warm and fragrant blanket against the night's chill. Some say he brought her berries to eat, sweet and wild, or showed her where to find a spring of clear, cool water. He watches over her as she sleeps, a silent, unobtrusive guardian, the spirit of the forest itself her protector. When the first pale fingers of dawn touch the eastern sky, painting the birch leaves with gold, the Gilly-Doo gently rouses the child. He leads her, not by the hand, for he is ever shy of direct contact, but by walking a little ahead, pausing to look back, guiding her along hidden deer trails and through tangled thickets until, at last, they reach the edge of the woodland. There, Jessie can see the familiar sight of her own village, smoke curling from the chimneys, the comforting sounds of life drifting on the morning air. She turns to thank her strange, sylvan protector, her heart full of a wonder she cannot yet articulate. But the Gilly-Doo is gone. He has melted back into the birch trees, vanishing as silently and completely as he appeared, leaving no trace but the lingering scent of moss and the incredible story the child would later recount to her astounded family. They search, of course, the villagers and her parents, combing the woods, calling his name, but the Gilly-Doo is a master of concealment, seen only when he wishes to be seen. This tender act of kindness towards a lost child cemented the Gilly-Doo's place in Highland folklore as a benign, if elusive, spirit. He remains a symbol of the untamed wilderness, a reminder that even in the wildest places there can be gentleness, and that the old magic still holds sway, especially for those with an innocent heart. But the ancient birch woods, his sacred domain, grow smaller with each passing year. The tread of progress encroaches, and the quiet places where a Gilly-Doo might dwell become fewer and farther between. Does he still wander those remaining groves, a solitary figure clad in leaves and moss, his dark eyes watching from the shadows? Perhaps. Sometimes a hiker deep in the highlands might report a fleeting glimpse of something or someone that vanishes before it can be truly identified. A flicker of green and brown amidst the silver trunks, or a child, having wandered just a little too far at the edge of an old wood, might return with a curious tale of a kind man covered in leaves who showed them the way back, a man no one else saw. And on quiet nights, when the wind sighs through the birch trees, some say if you listen very closely, you can almost hear a soft rustling footfall, a silent guardian still making his rounds, forever bound to the wild heart of the forest, ever watchful, ever present. Or is it just the wind, playing tricks with the leaves once more? Sawney Bean. Our story takes root in the unforgiving soil of 15th or perhaps early 16th century Galloway, a wild and desolate stretch of southwestern Scotland. Picture a coastline battered by the relentless fury of the Irish Sea, where sheer cliffs plummet into churning, grey waters and hidden coves lie like jagged teeth in the land's rugged jaw. The roads, mere muddy tracks snaking through windswept moorland and dense, unwelcoming forests, were lonely, perilous routes. In those days, lawlessness was a shadow that stretched long, and the unwary traveller could vanish without a trace, their cries swallowed by the vast, indifferent wilderness. It was into this world, it is said, that Alexander Sawney Bean was born. Some tales paint him as the son of a hedger or ditch digger, a man from whom he inherited a strong back but a spirit utterly averse to honest toil. From his earliest years, a cruel and indolent streak was noted in Sawney, a preference for idleness punctuated by acts of petty malice. He was a man who recoiled from the society of others, his heart a barren field where empathy failed to sprout. Soon he found a kindred spirit, a woman as wild and brutish as himself, sometimes named Black Agnes Douglas. though her true name, like much of this legend, is shrouded in the mists of infamy. She was, they say, possessed of a similar savage disposition, her eyes reflecting a cruelty that matched his own. Together this pair turned their backs on the semblance of civilized life, seeking a refuge that would mirror the desolation in their souls, and they found it. Along that treacherous Galloway coast, near a place often identified as Benene Head or Ballantrae, they discovered a sea cave of extraordinary depth and secrecy. Imagine its entrance, a gaping maw in the cliff face, entirely concealed at high tide, the waves crashing against the rocks, guarding its dark secrets. Inside, it was a labyrinth of damp, narrow passages, twisting and turning for nearly a mile into the black heart of the earth, a place where daylight dared not intrude, lit only by the flickering, greasy light of whatever crude lamps they fashioned. This chilling, subterranean hollow became their fortress, their abattoir, and the accursed cradle of their monstrous brood. For Sawney Bean and his mate did not merely exist in this watery den. They began to propagate, and from their union a clan was born. A clan conceived in darkness and nurtured on horrors. Their sustenance, you see, came not from the sea or the land through honest means, but from waylaying unsuspecting travelers. Under the cloak of twilight or in the dead of night, they would emerge from their hidden lair like predatory beasts, to ambush those who journeyed alone or in small vulnerable groups along the coastal paths. The attacks were brutal and swift. Victims were overwhelmed, robbed of their meager possessions, and then, with a chilling efficiency, silenced forever. But their grim work did not end there. The bodies were dragged back to the cavern, their flesh to become the clan's unholy fare. Within those dripping, lightless passages, scenes of unimaginable horror unfolded. The Bean clan, it is whispered with a shudder, were cannibals. They dismembered their victims, pickling the human flesh in barrels, hanging strips to dry in the dank air like grotesque charcuterie, ensuring a constant supply of sustenance for their ever-expanding family. Over a period reputed to be some 25 years, the clan swelled in number. Sons and daughters were born, and in their isolation, they knew no law but their father's, no morality but the savagery of their existence. Brother coupled with sister, father with daughter, and from these incestuous unions, grandchildren were born, children of the cave, feral and degenerate, their first sights the dismemberment of human bodies, their first lessons the art of the ambush. The clan grew to several dozen, some say 48 souls, a grotesque parody of a family bound by blood and by their shared, unspeakable crimes. Meanwhile, the surrounding countryside was gripped by a creeping terror. People began to vanish. A peddler on his way to market, a young couple eloping, a solitary soldier, all gone without a trace. Livestock, too, would occasionally disappear, though it was the human prey the Beans truly craved. Frantic searches were mounted, but the desolate coastline and the labyrinthine cave guarded their secret well. In the absence of answers, fear bred suspicion. Innocent innkeepers were accused of murdering their guests. Their establishments burned to the ground. Lonely hermits and bewildered travelers were hauled before magistrates, tortured, and executed for crimes they did not commit. The true culprits remaining hidden, their ghastly feasting uninterrupted. The land itself seemed to groan under the weight of this unseen, pervasive evil. The downfall of the Bean clan, when it finally came, was as brutal as their reign of terror. The most common telling recounts a husband and wife returning from a local fair, the man well armed and mounted, his wife riding pillion behind him. As they passed a lonely stretch of coast, the Beans launched their attack. They swarmed from the shadows, a horde of wild figures, their eyes glinting with predatory hunger. They managed to drag the woman from the horse, and before her husband's horrified eyes, she was brutally slaughtered, her throat slit, her belly ripped open by the savage women of the clan, eager for their share. But the husband was a man of considerable courage and skill. Drawing his sword and pistol, he fought with the fury of a man who had lost everything, holding the cannibal horde at bay. Some say he managed to cut down several of his attackers. Just as he was about to be overwhelmed, a larger group of fairgoers, perhaps some 30 strong, happened upon the scene. Faced with this unexpected and formidable force, the beings for the first time were forced to retreat, snarling and spitting like cornered animals, melting back towards their hidden lair, leaving behind the mangled body of the woman and a scene of carnage that would finally unravel their monstrous secret. The husband, half mad with grief and rage, carried his horrific tale to the authorities, some say directly to King James VI of Scotland himself, who would later become James I of England. The king, incensed by such barbarity within his realm, is said to have personally led a small army, complete with bloodhounds, to hunt down this nest of vipers. The search was arduous, the rugged coastline offering countless hiding places, but the dogs, their senses keen, eventually led the king's men to the mouth of that terrible cave, its entrance revealed at low tide. Imagine the soldiers' trepidation as they ventured into the stinking, oppressive darkness, their torches casting flickering, grotesque shadows on the damp rock walls. What they discovered within was a charnel house beyond their worst imaginings. Piles of human bones, remnants of countless victims lay strewn about. Barrels of pickled limbs and organs lined the passages, valuables plundered from their prey. Coins, jewelry, clothing were heaped in macabre treasure troves. And there, cowering in the deepest recesses, they found the Bean clan, men, women, and children, their bodies filthy, their eyes vacant or glaring with feral hatred, more animal than human. There was no trial. The evidence of their atrocities was overwhelming, the crimes too heinous for the due process of law. The entire clan was captured and transported to Edinburgh, or perhaps Leith, where a swift and brutal justice was meted out. The men had their hands and feet cut off and were left to bleed to death, a terrible symmetry to their own dismemberment of victims. The women and children were forced to watch this gruesome spectacle before being burned alive at the stake. It is said that to the very end, none of them showed any remorse, instead spewing curses and vile imprecations, their defiant howls mingling with the crackle of the flames. Thus ended the reign of Sawney Bean and his cannibal clan. Or did it? The historical veracity of Sawney Bean is a matter of much debate among scholars. No definitive contemporary records confirm his existence or these specific events. Some argue it is a dark folktale, a bogeyman story created to explain disappearances, or perhaps anti-Scottish propaganda from later centuries. Yet, the legend persists, told and retold, its gruesome details enduring with a chilling tenacity. And even if the man Sawney and his original brood were indeed wiped from the face of the earth, the story leaves a residue of unease. Those desolate coves along the Galloway coast still echo with the roar of the sea, and the wind still whispers through the gorse. Could such a profound darkness, such an aberration of humanity, truly be extinguished so completely? Some whisper that not all the children were found, that perhaps one or two, small and cunning, slipped away into the wilderness, carrying the cursed bloodline into the shadows. And in the deepest, most forgotten caves, where the tide still sighs and the darkness remains absolute, one cannot help but wonder, what truly lurks there, waiting, listening, perhaps even hungry? The Big Grey Man of Ben Macdui. Imagine, if you will, Ben Macdui. Not merely a mountain, but a colossal titan of granite. Its summit sprawling into a vast Arctic-like plateau, a place of stark, primordial beauty. This is a realm where the sky feels impossibly close, and the silence can be so profound it hums in your ears. Yet this silence is often broken by the mournful sigh of the wind as it scours the exposed rock and stunted, tenacious flora. The weather here is a fickle, formidable beast. Brilliant sunshine can surrender in moments to a blinding, disorienting whiteout. Thick mists can roll in with terrifying speed, swallowing landmarks and transforming the familiar into the alien. To be caught on these high places when the clouds descend is to feel an isolation so complete, so overwhelming it can touch the very edge of primal fear. It is within this theatre of elemental power that whispers of Fear, Liath Mor, the big grey man, have taken root and grown into a legend that chills the blood of even the most seasoned mountaineers. He is not a creature of defined form, no easily categorized beast. Instead, he is an experience, a presence, a creeping dread that insinuates itself into the psyche. Descriptions are often frustratingly vague, born of fleeting glimpses through swirling vapor. Some speak of an exceedingly tall, human-like figure, perhaps 10 feet or more in height, covered in short, dark hair, or simply appearing as the immense, grey, shadowy outline against the mist. Others never see him at all, yet are acutely, terrifyingly aware of his proximity. More common than sightings are the sounds, the crunching of unseen footsteps on the gravelly scree, seeming to follow, to match your pace, sometimes growing closer, sometimes receding, yet always there, just beyond the veil of visibility. And then there is the feeling, an overwhelming, inexplicable wave of panic, a profound sense of being watched, of an ancient, powerful sentience sharing that desolate space with you, its intentions unknown, but felt as utterly inimical. The most famous account, the one that truly brought the big grey man into the public consciousness, comes from a man of science, Professor Norman Colley, a respected mountaineer and chemist. In 1891, Colley was descending from the summit of Ben Macdui alone. The mist, as it so often does, had closed in, shrouding the landscape in an ethereal grey. He began to hear, he later recounted, a curious crunching sound behind him, as if someone were walking in his footsteps but with a stride far longer than his own. Initially he dismissed it, attributing it to echoes or the wind. But the sound persisted, growing louder, closer. Imagine his mounting unease alone on that vast, empty plateau, the silence broken only by his own breathing and those inexplicable rhythmic crunches. He quickened his pace. The footsteps behind him quickened too. He described how the thing, for he could not define it, seemed to be just yards away. A vast, shadowy presence felt more than seen in the dense fog. A sudden, overwhelming terror seized him, a primal fear he had never before experienced. For 3 or 4 miles, he later confessed, I was in a blind, ungovernable terror. He fled, stumbling and running, down the treacherous slopes, not daring to look back until he reached the relative safety of the Rothiamercus forest far below. Professor Colley, a man of logic and reason, remained convinced for the rest of his life that he had been pursued by something truly extraordinary and terrifying. His story, once told, opened a floodgate. Other climbers, emboldened by his reputation, began to share their own unsettling experiences. One walker, in 1904, described hearing Gaelic speech, strange and guttural, when he knew he was utterly alone. Another, Peter Densham, a pilot and mountaineer, recounted in 1945 how he heard heavy footsteps and felt an eerie, abnormal presence that compelled him to flee, despite being a man not easily spooked. He too spoke of an overwhelming sense of dread that had no rational basis. There are those who have sought to explain these encounters through natural phenomena. The Brocken spectre is often cited, a phenomenon where an observer's own shadow is cast onto mist, often appearing greatly enlarged and sometimes surrounded by a rainbow-like halo. It can indeed be an unnerving sight. Yet this explanation falls short for many. It does not account for the distinct rhythmic footsteps heard when no visual apparition is present. Nor does it explain the consistent reports of an overwhelming, almost psychic wave of panic that seems to descend upon individuals, a terror far exceeding the surprise of an optical illusion. Consider the unique atmosphere of Ben Macdui's summit. When the mist descends, it is a world transformed. Sound can play tricks, muffled and distorted by the thick, damp air. The vast, featureless expanse can induce a sense of agoraphobia, of being lost in an endless grey void. Yet the consistency of the core elements in the accounts, The footsteps, the sense of a looming presence, the crushing fear, suggests something more than mere environmental disorientation. The legend of Am Fear Liath Mor endures, not as a monster to be hunted, but as an enigma, a chilling question mark hanging over one of Britain's wildest places. He is the spirit of the mountain, perhaps. A manifestation of its raw, untamed power, or something older still, a guardian of secrets best left undisturbed. Legends of Second Sight. Our journey takes us to the rugged heart of the Scottish Highlands and the wave-lashed Hebridean Isles, though echoes of this strange perception can be found in many a quiet, contemplative corner of the earth. Picture, if you will, crofts nestled in lonely glens where the mountains seem to hold their breath, their peaks often veiled in an ethereal mist. Imagine the endless, rhythmic sigh of the Atlantic against stark cliffs and the deep, dark lochs that mirror the ever-changing sky, holding secrets within their depths. In these places where the veil between the seen and the unseen feels impossibly thin, where the old ways cling like heather to the hills, the faculty known as Anda Shealad, the two sights, or second sight, has long been a profound and often unsettling part of life. This is no conjurer's trick, no flight of fanciful divination sought for gain. Second sight, more often than not, descends unbidden. It is an involuntary opening of an inner eye, a sensitivity that allows an individual to perceive events, often sorrowful, before they unfold in the tangible world. It is a window into the liminal, a glimpse of the threads of fate being woven. For some, it is a hereditary trait, passed down through generations like the color of one's eyes or the shape of one's hands, a legacy both extraordinary and heavy. The manifestations of second sight are as varied as the human experience itself, yet they all carry an unmistakable air of the uncanny, a chilling resonance of truth. Consider the visual apparitions. A seer might look up from their daily toil to see the wraith or taslach of a living person. This spectral double might walk a familiar path, its expression perhaps sorrowful or distant, its clothing identical to what the actual person wears, or sometimes, chillingly, dressed as they will be for their own burial. The seer knows, with a certainty that settles cold in their bones, that this is a harbinger. The person whose fetch they have witnessed is soon to die, or perhaps to arrive unexpectedly from a long journey. The vision might be fleeting, a mere shimmer in the air, or it could be startlingly solid, passing so close the seer feels a breath of cold air. Then there are the auditory premonitions, sounds that pierce the ordinary hum of existence with messages from beyond the veil. A lonely woman, mending nets by the peat fire, might hear the distinct heavy tread of her husband's boots on the stone path outside her cottage, only to open the door to an empty, windswept night. Days later, word arrives that her husband, a fisherman far out at sea, was lost to the waves at that very moment his phantom footsteps echoed at her threshold. Others might hear the mournful strains of a funeral psalm, a coronach, when no mourners are present, or the sharp, rhythmic tap-tap-tapping of a phantom hammer, as if a coffin is being hastily constructed nearby. Sometimes a name is called, clear as a bell, by an unseen voice, a summons to an event yet to crystallize in time. Symbolic visions, too, are a potent feature of second sight. Perhaps the most well-known are the Soleis Bais, the corpse candles, eerie, unexplained lights, often blue or a pale flickering white, seen drifting silently over the landscape. They follow the exact route a future funeral procession will take, from the house of the soon-to-be deceased to their final resting place in the graveyard. The size and brightness of the light might even indicate whether the impending death is that of an adult or a child. To witness a phantom funeral is an even more elaborate and chilling experience. The seer beholds a full procession, complete with spectral mourners, their faces often indistinct or bowed in grief, carrying a coffin. The perceived weight of this spectral coffin can sometimes indicate to the seer whether the actual coffin will be heavy or light. And sometimes, a living person might be seen by the seer with a shroud attached, wrapped around them. The higher the shroud reaches, to the knees, the chest, the chin, the more imminent their death. Beyond sight and sound, the premonitions can manifest as other sensory experiences. A sudden, inexplicable scent of freshly dug earth or damp peat might fill the air indoors. A premonition of a grave being opened. A bone-deep chill, unrelated to the weather, might seize the seer, accompanied by an overwhelming wave of dread or profound sorrow, an emotional echo of a tragedy yet to occur. Let me paint you a scene, drawn from the countless accounts that color this tradition. Imagine an old fisherman, his face a testament to wind and sea, mending his nets on a still grey afternoon by a remote sea loch. His gaze drifts across the water to the ancient, heather-clad burial isle where his ancestors sleep. Suddenly, the air grows heavy. He sees, not with his physical eyes, but with that other inner sight, a boat, dark and silent, gliding across the loch towards the island. In it lies a figure, still and shrouded. The fisherman's heart constricts. He recognizes no one in the phantom boat, yet the vision is imbued with an unshakable reality. He says nothing, for who would believe him? But a week later, news arrives from a distant port. His young nephew, a sailor on a trading vessel, was tragically drowned. His body brought home for burial on that very isle, his coffin ferried across the loch just as the old man had foreseen. Those blessed or cursed with second sight often carried their ability as a heavy burden. It was not a power to be flaunted, but a solemn, often isolating knowledge. They could foresee the sorrow, the loss, the arrival of grim tidings, yet were almost always powerless to prevent it. How does one tell a laughing, vibrant neighbor that you have seen their shroud up to their chin? The seers were often figures of respect, yes, but also of fear. Their pronouncements, delivered with a quiet, sorrowful certainty, could cast a pall over a community. Their presence a constant reminder of the unseen forces that shape human destiny. Sometimes rituals were spoken of, ways to divert the gaze, perhaps, or to understand the visions more clearly, but true control over the second sight was a rare and elusive thing. The modern world, with its relentless logic and clamor, has pushed such ancient perceptions to the periphery. The mists of progress, some might say, have obscured that delicate inner vision. Yet, the legends persist, not merely as quaint folklore, but as a testament to the enduring human intuition that there is more to this world than meets the physical eye. And who is to say that Andar Shealad has vanished entirely? Perhaps it lingers, more subtly now. Have you never felt a sudden, inexplicable chill when entering an old room, a fleeting sense of profound sadness with no apparent cause? Or experienced a moment of déjà vu so potent, so layered with unspoken meaning, that it leaves you momentarily breathless, as if you're recalling not a past, but a future event you've somehow already brushed against? Perhaps in those quiet moments of introspection, when the noise of the world fades, the veil thins just a little, and for some, even now, the echoes of what is to come still ripple back, a faint spectral whisper on the wind, a half-seen shadow at the edge of sight, a reminder that the threads of time may not be as linear nor as opaque as we often choose to believe, and that the next vision might be forming even now, just beyond our everyday perception. The Green Lady of Crathes Castle. Imagine Crathes Castle rising amidst the lush rolling landscapes of Aberdeenshire. It is a magnificent edifice, a quintessential Scottish tower house, its fairy tale facade of harled pink stone, intricate turrets and high gabled roofs belying the centuries of human drama that have unfolded within its formidable walls. Built by the Bonnet family in the latter half of the 16th century, its foundations are sunk deep into land held by them since the 1300s. Its very stones seem to breathe history. Its ancient yew hedges whisper secrets to the wind, and its interiors, rich with oak paneling and painted ceilings, hold an atmosphere thick with the echoes of forgotten lives. It is within these venerable walls, specifically in a chamber known, quite naturally, as the Green Lady's Room, that our spectral protagonist most often makes her sorrowful appearance. She is, as her name suggests, a lady clad in a gown of green, a color that might evoke the vibrancy of nature, or perhaps in a more melancholic vein, a love lost or a life cut tragically short. She is rarely a figure of terror, but rather one of profound, lingering sadness. Her story, pieced together from fragments of folklore and the chill that clings to certain rooms, is a deeply human tragedy. The most enduring narrative paints her as a young woman, perhaps a ward of the Burnet lairds, or some say a kinswoman, who found herself in a desperate and perilous situation within the castle's unyielding social confines. It is whispered that she fell pregnant out of wedlock, a circumstance that, in those stern and unforgiving times, could bring profound shame and ruin upon a family. What became of this young woman and her child? Here the legend darkens, becoming a tale of hushed-up scandal and suspected foul play. For a time, her presence, and that of her infant, simply ceased. She vanished from the castle records, from the daily life within its walls, as if swallowed by the very stones that surrounded her. For centuries, her tale remained a whisper, a ghost story told by flickering candlelight to unnerve new arrivals or entertain guests. But then, during renovations in the 18th or early 19th century, a time when old castles often yielded their long-held secrets, a discovery was made that sent a shiver of grim affirmation through the folklore. Beneath the hearthstone of a fireplace, or some say concealed within a recess in the thick stone walls of the very room she is said to haunt, workmen unearthed the skeletal remains of a woman and a tiny infant. The bones, small and brittle with age, told a silent, devastating story, lending a terrible credence to the sightings of a sorrowful lady in green, forever bound to the place of her earthly suffering and untimely demise. Her manifestations are as poignant as her suspected fate. She is often seen gliding silently across the Green Lady's Room, sometimes pausing by the ancient fireplace, as if drawn to the place where her earthly remains and those of her child lay hidden for so long. Witnesses describe a figure, sometimes distinct, her green dress vivid against the dark wood, her features often obscured or sorrowful. At other times, her presence is more ethereal, a fleeting glimpse of green fabric disappearing through a doorway, a cold spot that inexplicably chills the air in an otherwise warm room, or the faint, almost imperceptible scent of old lace in a profound, melancholic stillness. Perhaps most heartbreakingly, she is sometimes seen cradling a spectral infant in her arms, her movements gentle, her sorrow palpable, forever locked in an ethereal tableau of lost motherhood. The rustle of silk, where no silk is present, has been reported, as has the faint, distant sound of a woman weeping, a sound that seems to emanate from the very fabric of the castle itself. Many have claimed to witness her. Castle staff, through the generations, have recounted quiet, unexplained encounters. Visitors, unaware of the legend, have sometimes asked about the lady in the green dress they thought they saw pacing in a particular chamber. She does not interact, she does not threaten, she merely is. A persistent, sorrowful echo of a life cut short, a tragedy absorbed by the ancient stones. It is said that her presence is not tied to portents for the living inhabitants. Unlike some other ancestral spirits, her grief is her own, her wanderings a solitary vigil, a testament to a personal tragedy that refuses to fade into the oblivion of forgotten time. She is a poignant reminder that the grand tapestries of history are woven not just with threads of triumph and nobility, but also with the darker skeins of human cruelty and sorrow. The Green Lady's room still exists within Craith's castle, a beautiful chamber by day, steeped in history. But as twilight descends and the shadows lengthen, stretching across the ancient floorboards, one cannot help but feel a certain watchfulness in the air. The silence deepens, and the past feels very close. The wind, perhaps, sighs a little more mournfully around its casements. Is that a flicker of movement by the hearth, a whisper of green in the periphery of your vision, or merely the play of fading light on old tapestries? She may have been given a name in some tellings, but her identity remains as spectral as her form. Her story, a haunting testament to a secret Craith's castle, has yet to fully relinquish. For even now, it is said, on the quietest of nights when the castle sleeps under a canopy of stars, a mother's love and a mother's sorrow still seeks solace within those ancient walls, forever searching, forever grieving, forever green. Wolvers, the kind-hearted wolfmen of the Shetland Isles. Picture these islands. Shetland, a rugged archipelago where the land meets the sea in a dramatic embrace of towering cliffs, secluded voes, and wave-battered skerries. Life here has always been shaped by the ocean's moods, its bounty, its fury, its profound encompassing presence. Imagine crofts nestled in sheltered hollows, their peat smoke a thin blue ribbon against the vast, often moody sky, windswept moorlands blooming with heather and cotton grass, and the ever-present calls of seabirds echoing over landscapes steeped in Norse and Scottish lore. It is in this ancient, elemental setting that the tales of the Wulver were born. The Wulver is a creature apart, a being that defies easy categorization. He is no terrifying werewolf, that tormented soul shifting between man and beast under the baleful light of the moon. No, the Wulver exists in a state of gentle duality, possessing the body of a man, yet crowned with the noble head of a wolf. His form is covered in short, thick brown hair, a natural garment against the often harsh Shetland elements. He is not a shapeshifter. This is his true and only form, a testament to a lineage that seems to bridge the wild and the humane. His nature, unlike the savage beasts of other legends, is inherently peaceful. The Wulver is a solitary being, content with his own company, seeking no quarrel with humankind. He is often depicted as a thoughtful, almost philosophical creature, spending long hours in quiet contemplation. His chosen abode is typically a rough cave hollowed out by the sea, or a simple shelter built amongst the rocks in some secluded, unfrequented spot. One of the most enduring images of the Wulver is that of him fishing. Each Wulver, it was said, had his own particular rock, a Wulver's stain, often a flat slab jutting out into a fish-rich tide. There he would sit for hours, patiently angling with a line and tackle of his own devising, his lupine head bowed in concentration, his movements unhurried and deliberate. The sea, it seemed, offered him its bounty willingly. But it is the Wulver's quiet acts of kindness, his unassuming charity, that truly set him apart in the annals of folklore. He was known to be particularly mindful of the poor and the needy, those struggling to make ends meet in the often harsh environment of the Isles. Imagine a crofter's cottage, home to a family facing a lean winter, the fishing boat storm-stayed, the larder growing bare. As dawn breaks, a child sent to fetch water might find, placed carefully upon the windowsill or by the door, a small pile of fresh fish, sillox or piltocks, glistening with sea dew. No one would have seen the benefactor, but a knowing glance might pass between the parents, a silent acknowledgement of the Wulver's unseen generosity. There are tales, too, of the Wulver acting as a gentle guide. Picture a traveller, perhaps a visitor unfamiliar with the treacherous moorland paths, caught out as a thick Shetland mist, rolls in, dense and disorienting, swallowing landmarks and chilling to the bone. Lost and on the verge of panic, they might suddenly become aware of a figure, indistinct at first in the swirling vapour, the Wulver. He would not approach too closely, nor utter a sound, but would simply move ahead, his dark form a fleeting reassurance, leading the way along some almost invisible sheep track or around a dangerous bog, until the lost soul found themselves on familiar ground or within sight of a welcoming light. Then, as silently as he appeared, the Wulver would melt back into the mist, his good deed done without expectation of thanks. The islanders in turn held a quiet respect for these gentle wolfmen. They were not hunted, nor were they feared in the way other supernatural beings might be. It was generally understood that if you left the Wulver to his own peaceful devices, he would cause no harm. Indeed, to disturb a Wulver, or worse, to attempt to injure one, was considered gravely unlucky. Children were taught not to stray too near a Wulver's stein, not out of fear of the Wulver himself, but out of respect for his solitude and his right to that place. His presence was simply an accepted part of the wilder fabric of Shetland life, a reminder that not all that is different is dangerous, and that kindness can be found in the most unexpected of forms. He stands in stark contrast to the ravening werewolf, driven by bloodlust and curse. The Wulver is a creature of innate goodness, a symbol, perhaps, of a deep, unspoken harmony that could exist between humanity and the wild spirit of nature. He asks for nothing, yet sometimes gives what is most needed. In modern times, as the old ways fade and the wild places shrink, sightings of the Wulver have become vanishingly rare, consigned mostly to the pages of folklore collections and the memories of the very old. The Wulver's stains are perhaps now just ordinary rocks, their special significance forgotten by many, yet the spirit of his legend, that quiet benevolence, lingers in the Shetland air. And who is to say that they are entirely gone? Perhaps in the most remote, untouched corners of those windswept isles, where the cry of the curlew is the only sound and the sea mist clings like a shroud to the ancient hills, a solitary figure still sits upon a weathered stone, his wolfish head silhouetted against the grey Atlantic swell. Legends of the Sea, the fairy lord of the Highlands. Imagine the Highlands, a realm of majestic heather-clad mountains, their peaks often lost in a swirl of cloud, of deep, brooding forests where sunlight filters through ancient boughs to dapple the mossy floor, of secluded glens where the silence is broken only by the rush of a hidden burn or the cry of a distant eagle. It is in such places, particularly at the liminal hours of twilight, that magical interlude between day and night, or within the protective embrace of a sudden silvery mist, that the world of the Sea, pronounced roughly Aish-Shi, draws closest to our own. These are not the diminutive, gossamer-winged sprites of nursery tales. The Sea, the people of the mounds, are a powerful and ancient race, believed by some to be the descendants of the Tuatha De Danann, the godlike beings who ruled Ireland before the coming of mortals. Others whisper they are fallen angels, not wicked enough for hell, nor virtuous enough for heaven, condemned to walk the hidden pathways of the earth. They are beings of immense power, often possessing an ethereal, aristocratic beauty, tall and graceful, with eyes that hold the wisdom and sorrow of ages. Their garments are frequently described as being of the finest green silk, or shimmering as if woven from moonlight itself, and they are known for their love of exquisite music, grand feasts, and dazzling torchlit processions that wind through the night. Their kingdom is the otherworld, a realm existing parallel to ours, yet unseen by most mortal eyes. Its gateways are the Citeanon, the fairy mounds, those distinctive rounded green hills that dot the highland landscape, often ancient burial cairns or natural knolls imbued with otherworldly power. Old ruins, certain caves, and even specific ancient trees can also serve as portals to their luminous, timeless domain. Interaction with the Sea was, for the Highlanders of old, a matter of profound caution, a delicate dance between respect and fear. For while they could, on occasion, bestow good fortune, Their nature was often capricious, and their displeasure could bring swift and terrible consequences. One of the greatest fears was the abduction of mortals, particularly beautiful children, nursing mothers, or talented young adults. The Aussie, it was believed, coveted human vitality and skill. They might steal away a healthy babe from its cradle, leaving in its place a changeling, often a withered, wizened old fairy, or a sickly, pining creature that would fret and wail incessantly, refusing nourishment and bringing endless grief to the human family. The signs were known: an unnatural appetite, a sudden lack of affection, an old knowing look in an infant's eyes. Desperate parents might resort to various rituals to expose the changeling and reclaim their true child, often involving the threat of cold iron or fire, elements abhorrent to the fairy folk. Then there was the allure of their music. Imagine a traveler benighted on a lonely moor, suddenly hearing melodies of such unearthly beauty that all weariness, all thought of home, vanishes. Drawn by the enchanting strains, they might stumble upon a fairy mound, its side inexplicably open, revealing a scene of dazzling light and joyous revelry within. Invited to join the feast and the dance, the mortal might partake, thinking only a few hours have passed in a blissful celebration. But time in the other world flows differently. Upon emerging, they might find the landscape subtly altered, their home unfamiliar, and learn to their horror that not hours, but years, decades, or even centuries have passed in the mortal realm. Their loved ones are long gone. Their world changed beyond recognition, leaving them adrift, a relic of a forgotten time. Respect for the Aussie and their territories was paramount. Offerings of milk, butter, or a portion of the evening meal might be left out on a special stone or by the hearth to appease them and garner their goodwill. Conversely, to offend them was to invite disaster. Building a house or a byre across a known fairy path, those invisible routes they traveled between their mounds, was a sure way to incur their wrath, resulting in sick livestock, ill luck, or even the collapse of the offending structure. Cutting down a tree sacred to the fairies or disturbing their mounds could lead to unexplained illnesses, sudden accidents, or lingering misfortune for the perpetrator and their family. The Highlanders developed numerous methods of protection. Cold iron, a horseshoe nailed above the door, a knife carried in the pocket, was a potent deterrent, anathema to the fairy kind. Rowan berries with their 5-pointed star, a pentagram, a symbol of protection, were often hung above doorways or sewn into clothing. Running water was another barrier they were reluctant to cross. Turning one's coat inside out was a common way to confuse or repel them if one felt their presence. And of course, the recitation of prayers and specific charms offered spiritual defense. Many are the tales woven into the fabric of Highland lore. There's the story of the piper who, with boastful pride, declared he would enter a fairy mound and play a tune for the Seath folk, vowing to return. He marched into the hill, his pipe skirling bravely, but only the faint, increasingly mournful sound of his music echoed out before ceasing altogether. He was never seen again, though some say on still nights, if you press your ear to that particular mound, you can still hear the ghostly echo of his lament. Or the tale of the midwife, summoned on a stormy night by a mysterious, richly dressed stranger on a black horse, to attend a birth in a grand hidden hall, only to realize too late she was in a fairy dwelling, and to be warned by a previously abducted human servant not to eat or drink, lest she too become trapped. The banshee, that sorrowful harbinger of death for certain ancient families, is herself considered one of the Aussie, an ancestral spirit bound to her mortal kin, her wail a lament that bridges both worlds. In our modern world, lit by the harsh glare of electric light and dominated by the certainties of science, belief in the Aussie has largely receded into the realm of charming folklore. fairy mounds stand silent, often unremarked, their secrets undisturbed, yet the wild, untamed places of the Highlands still hold a potent atmosphere, a sense of something ancient and watchful, just beyond the everyday. And who is to say they have truly departed? Perhaps they have merely withdrawn further from our noisy, skeptical world, their shimmering courts now hidden even deeper within the folds of the land, their music played only for those who still possess the ear to hear it. Imagine, as dusk settles over a remote glen, a faint, captivating melody drifting on the evening breeze from a lonely, rounded hill. Or consider the hill walker, momentarily disoriented in a sudden mist, who glimpses a fleeting procession of graceful figures, clad in shimmering green, moving silently through the heather, only to vanish as the mist clears. Could it be that the gateways to their world still shimmer, unseen by most, waiting for an unsuspecting footstep, or a heart still open to the ancient enchantments of the Highlands to once more swing silently open? The Aussie are patient, and the old paths, they say, are never truly closed. Our recounting of these timeless legends from the wilder fringes of Britain and Ireland now draws to a close, but the spirits and creatures themselves, it is said, have never truly departed. From the unfathomable depths of Loch Ness to the mist-shrouded peaks of the Cairngorms, from the haunted stones of ancient castles to the hidden fairy mounds of the Highlands, these narratives endure. They are etched into the landscapes, whispered in the folklore, and felt in the shiver that runs down the spine on a lonely night. These tales of elusive monsters, benevolent guardians, sorrowful phantoms, terrifying cannibals, and the ever-present, powerful lochs explore the enduring mysteries of nature, the thin veil between our world and the next, the depths of human cruelty, and the surprising springs of kindness found in the most unexpected forms. Whether born of fleeting glimpses, ancestral memory, or the deepest human fears and wonders, they remain a vital, breathing part of a rich cultural heritage. May these legends continue to stir the imagination, remind us of the magic woven into the fabric of the world, and whisper their unsettling questions into the winds for generations yet to come. For in the quiet places, if you listen closely, their stories are still being told.